On this episode, we have returning guest. We're going to call it part 2. Second time I've had an interview with him, with owner and head instructor of 10th Planet Chicago, Josh Passini. Josh is a brown belt underneath Eddie Bravo, the creator of 10th Planet, who is a black belt underneath the great Jean Jacque Machado. We talk about endurance and how Josh manages to do jiu-jitsu on a daily basis, how personal style affects your jiu-jitsu, Passini grappling, and Josh dropped some big news that he is looking to take an MMA fight in 2019. Also, stay tuned for a Vox Pop where I ask people on the street and Josh if they could be the best at one form of a martial art, what would it be and why? Josh talks about self-evaluation, staying on track, and mental toughness to finish out the episode. I'm glad to have him. He's a really good friend, very knowledgeable, and I want to say thank you, Josh, again for taking the time to sit down with me. So without further delay, here is the interview with Josh Passini. All right, everybody, and we're back here at Head Kick Radio in the 10th Planet Dojo, because I call my place the Dojo, so I got to call this the Dojo. Sitting here again.
The favela.
The favela.
The favela.
This is like Brazil in Chicago.
Brazilian slum in the basement.
Sitting here sitting here with the second episode. We'll call it part 2 with 10th Planet head instructor and owner Josh Passini. What's up, buddy?
Everything's good.
How you been?
Living the dream, or at least attempting to. So, if my voice sounds raspy or whatever, it's because I'm feeling a little under the weather, but that's not going to stop us from doing the damn thing. So we're here. Exactly.
You got hammered for mouth breathing last time, so we're wearing headphones so we can detect this.
Yeah. Well, it's the nature of the beast when your nose has dimples in it and crushed septums and all that fun stuff. It's, kind of comes with the territory. So deal with it.
Heck yeah. I mean, you can submit everybody anyway, so it's like the trash talking only went so far.
Well, I don't know. I don't know who else trash talked me, but of the people who trash talk me, yeah, a lot of times I'll get one over on them.
It was all your students. It was all the guys you choke out on a regular basis.
Yeah, that's all right.
But sitting here, I was actually thinking about that, the time change and, being under the weather, this and that, and always being at your best when it comes to doing jiu-jitsu. How do you do it day in and day out?
You just do it. And the reality is that I don't know if you're ever really at your best. You're, as the best as you can be that day, and you just keep doing it. And then, as we get older and smarter, you tail it back. Like last night, I didn't enroll last night because I was like, I feel something creeping up. Not only do I not want to breathe in the guy's face, it's all heavy, but then I was like, okay, I'm going to let my body heal a little bit. And so I just relaxed today and went from there.
You were working a full-time job, and then now you're doing this mainly full-time, but still doing other stuff on the side. Do you find it easier when you would just be like, all right, this is my set schedule, I'm going to work, and then I'm going to go teach jiu-jitsu, or do you find it easier like, hey, I can kind of rest my body a little bit more than I used to when I was working at, like a 9-to-5 kind of thing?
Yeah, now I have the I'll call it a luxury. I was going to say freedom, but that's not the right word. I have the luxury to, if I need to take a day and just chill, I can. My little ones are in school, so I can, not that I sleep all day because I can't do that, but if I needed to, then I could. Yeah, so I could definitely recover and whatnot. But yeah.
Do you think it helps you on the mats when you're teaching and rolling?
No, I mean, I still pretty much run the same schedule, but I guess if something did happen, I could rest, but I feel really lazy, really unproductive if I just sit around and do nothing. So, if I'm laying in bed, I'm going to do admin stuff, or I'm going to do research on what other gyms are doing, or, what the industry's doing, or catch up on moves, learn some new stuff. So, there's really no downtime per se. I just listened to a talk from one of my buddies, and he was talking about how, being your own, kind of your own boss allows you to have some freedoms and the luxury to do, not have to answer to anybody else, but you're on all the time. There's been times where my phone rings at 3:00 in the morning, and if I'm up, I answer that call. Usually I'm not up anymore that late, but I'm still, still up. But there's never really truly a day off unless I'm like out of the country, and then even if I'm out of the country, I still have access through the internet, so I can still answer emails and whatnot. But there's no really turning it off per se. Sundays on family day, I put the phone down and hang out with my kids and whatnot. But if there's like a break or they're taking a bath and just playing or whatever, I'll sneak over and see if anything came through. And if it doesn't, then I just put it back down and hang out and whatnot. But there's no real off days per se.
Yeah. But you're talking about turning it off. Is it easier now that this is kind of your sole focus, like as for, business, than when you had your other job and, you'd get 2 calls, maybe one for that, and you're like, man, I was maybe, you're talking about studying. Were you studying something, in jiu-jitsu, and you're like, oh, hang on, I got to shut off the jiu-jitsu brain and go back to the work brain. Do you find it now you can just keep that jiu-jitsu brain going all the time because it's your work brain?
In the past, like 13 years, I've never been able to shut off the jiu-jitsu brain. But I'm pretty good at multitasking in a sense, to where I always kind of have a lot of irons in the fire, so I can always kind of bounce back and forth between and do a couple different things. But jiu-jitsu, yeah, kind of once I started jiu-jitsu and MMA, I never ever turned it off. So it's always that switch is always on. So
yeah. So you're talking about studying jiu-jitsu, other gyms, things like that. How often, or how many hours a day? I shouldn't say how often, because I'm assuming it's every day. Do you study and watch different things, and do you watch trends? Do you just think, hey, maybe I'm interested in this. This is what I want to watch, or how does that work for you?
I don't have like a set format to it. I just kind of, go with ebbs and flows, kind of go with, how I feel. Like the other day I got this, I just felt like watching old videos of Jean Jacque from back in like 2000 and 2001 and 2002, just to see, a lot of times what happens is that people forget about, stuff that we did back in the day. And a lot of times that stuff is still valid. And it was cool. I actually saw like a lot of the things that we do in our system that, that are kind of unique to the 10 planet system, but Jean Jacque was doing as well. So it was kind of cool to see that, not really to get confirmation, but to be like, whoa, okay, if Jean Jacque is doing that too, well, that's powerful. And if he was doing it almost 20 years ago and yet it's still valid today, like, that just solidifies that, reinforces that, that's the path that we were doing. Like I never strayed away from 10th Planet in the sense of I never lost love for it, or, but with so much stimulus on everything else, with, there's so much jiu-jitsu out there, and a lot of it's really, really amazing, and a lot of it's really good. And, it's these days it's less and less of garbage, but there's so much out there that, it gets kind of confusing. Not really confusing. It just, there's so much content to take in that, it's hard to go, what's the new stuff, like what's the best thing, where should I move the curriculum to now? So I go back and look and say, okay, well, if there's something that's been a constant for 20 years, I'm not going to get away from that, and then I'll add pieces to the puzzle and, all that fun stuff slowly over time. But yeah, I just, go back, or maybe I'll go and, I really focus on the legends, not that there's anything wrong with the new guys because they're awesome, but I go back and look what Marcelo does, and I go back and look what Jean Jacque does and what Hickson does. And then I go, okay, well, that's a good base, and then start bringing in some of the new school stuff from there.
Yeah, so I want to continue on that. This was another thing I was thinking of on the way over, is your own personal style. And I want to make this a 2-part question. We'll get to the second part, obviously, because I want to stick to the jiu-jitsu here. But the first part of it is your jiu-jitsu style. So you always talked about in class, like when you first started jiu-jitsu, it was like the first couple of years you feel like you wasted time, I think is how you explained it to us. And then when you discovered the 10th Planet system and Eddie and how that kind of just clicked with you, and then you really got on track with your jiu-jitsu. So when you started learning the 10th Planet system, I assume that was your style at first. How has that evolved over time?
You know, although I do say that I wasted time, I definitely learned some things, but it wasn't systematic like how our system is. And that's, I think, part of the reason why I fell in love with the 10 Planet system, is because it's a system. It's not like, okay, well, here's this move from, blah, 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 blah. There's a system to it. Everything is taught in flows. And so that was when my learning really ramped up to where I really started to learn kind of what jiu-jitsu was. At least at the time, that's what I thought it was. And then the deeper I get into it, the more and more it's like, I know nothing, I know a bunch, but, like everything else.
Yeah, but you would say 10th Planet's your base. But as you keep progressing in this and, in your own journey, and as you're teaching it and things like that, because you're always having to, teach basics, which, fundamentals are fundamentals in jiu-jitsu. It's not 10th Planet. It's not the Gracies. It's not anything special. Fundamentals are what they are. So as you progress in your own journey and you have to keep teaching fundamentals, you keep teaching 10th Planet core stuff, but then do you have like that curious eye yourself, whether, you're looking out on the internet trying to find something just a little different than, fundamentals, something a little different than 10th Planet? And if you have, what is something you've implemented that's kind of outside of both of those?
Well, as much as I would like to say my jiu-jitsu base is 10th Planet, it is and it's not. Unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, because I wrestled since I was a little kid, I was definitely imprinted in that. So even when I see jiu-jitsu, I see wrestling. So I think more than anything else is that, for me, it's the infusion of the two combined, because in my opinion, I think that that's where, the most powerful version of grappling is going to come into, when you can take all the good stuff from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and all the stuff from wrestling. And we're not talking double leg takedowns and all that, because that is a component of wrestling. But I'm talking about the groundwork. I'm talking about the transitions, the flows, linking everything together, what we call chain wrestling, which is the same thing that you do in Jiu-Jitsu. And it's just fusing all those things together so that there's trying to eliminate any holes that are there. And I think that's probably my style. So my style looks a little like, I can teach the 10 Planet system almost exactly like Eddie, because I've learned over the years to, I can emulate somebody's style and go, okay, this is how Marcelo does it. I can show you how Marcelo does it. But with that being said, adding my wrestling components in there will then change it slightly, not drastic, but there's definitely differences that is seen in my grappling because of the hierarchy of what's important because of wrestling. And then that being said, wrestling, you're never on your back. So, so then that's when I throw in all the 10 Planet stuff. And that's really how, my philosophy is that old school philosophy of, being on top and smashing and controlling. And then you get stuck on your back. Then you use all the awesome 10 Planet techniques to chain everything to get back to it.
Awesome. So the part 2 of that question that I was really curious about is how much of your jiu-jitsu wrestling, in the gym style translate to your worldly style, like, whether at home with the kids or out with the buddies, like the way you dress, the way you act. How much of who you are in the gym translates to who you are outside of the gym?
I don't know. That's crazy. That's a tough question.
Do you ever, because like I was thinking about this, I was like, how much, like, when you take confidence, whether you have just good days, bad days from the gym, or the night before, or the day if you go in the morning, and you kind of carry it throughout maybe your next day. But then I was thinking even deeper. I was like, well, does that influence the way we dress, the way we act, the way we treat others?
I think it definitely influences how we treat others and how we're able to get through the day. But in terms of the other things, like, it's hard for me. I've been doing this for so long that I don't even really think about that anymore. So it's just like, this is who I am at this point. So, I'm definitely doing mental jiu-jitsu all day in my interactions with not only my kids, but, my wife and the outside world. So jiu-jitsu has definitely kind of become a part of me. And I learned that I saw the writing on the wall, and then the more I understand jiu-jitsu, the more I understand life. So for me, there's huge crossover in terms of behaviors and, you know, decision making and stuff like that. In terms of you know, aesthetics and whatnot, I just, you know, I'm less concerned about that in terms of jiu-jitsu. I'm not like, you know, I just wear what I want to wear, and, you know, I don't really care what anybody thinks.
Yeah. See, because the reason I brought that up is I was thinking about it as I was watching some behind the scenes UFC stuff for the one coming up this weekend. And as I was looking at some of the guys, I started to think about our lifestyle, like just down here in the locker room, like we're all getting ready before we put on our gear. And a lot of us come in like I'm dressed right now, wearing sweatpants, a hoodie, a hat, just kind of like the athletic, you know, casual attire. And I know that translates into a lot of our, you know, off the mat, like how we dress, how we act, kind of like that athlete persona, like we never dropped it from high school. And it's just kind of carried on with us, you know, here, you know, I'm about to be 30, you're in your 30s. And I feel like a lot of me has evolved since I was in high school, but then there's just some parts that have stayed the same. And I was kind of wondering, I'm like, well, I wonder if it's just going to stay the same now because this is just the jiu-jitsu lifestyle. This is the athletic lifestyle. And then I was wondering, since your journey's been a lot longer, if you've noticed, you know, a change, or if you noticed a lot of consistencies like that yourself.
It's possible. Like, you know, having to work a day job, you know, either I had to be in a uniform or I had to, you know, dress a certain way. So I couldn't get away with wearing like warm-up pants and you know, and like a t-shirt and a hoodie. So I think, you know, out of habit that, you know, I've been fortunate most of my professional careers. I've been able to get away with like jeans and a button-up, or, you know, so I generally you know, in that component, I'm wearing what I've been wearing for, you know, I've been running businesses since I was 16 years old. So, you know, going on 20 years of, you know, kind of having to do that. So that kind of just shaped what I wear. So, you know, and although I could these days wear, you know, sweatpants and a hoodie and whatnot, I still just default to jeans and whatnot.
Jeans and some Converse.
Yeah, jeans, some Converse. You know, it depends. You know, sometimes I'll have like some running shoes on, you know, or boots. You know, depending on what I'm doing. You know, I'll dress appropriately. If I'm going to be on a job site, you know, I'll be wearing job site clothes and work boots. If I'm out at the range or I'm out doing something, I'm going to be dressed appropriately. And then, yeah.
Okay. Because I was looking at these Chuck Taylors you're wearing here, and we're essentially the same size. We're not, you know, huge, but we're bigger people than the average, you know, male.
Yeah.
And I have a big foot, so I rock the Vans all the time. Vans or Nikes, because those are the only like wide shoe that, you know, fit these fat feet. How do you get away with the thin ones? Like I have a all black set of Chuck Taylors that I wear on nice occasions, but man, they just suffocate the feet.
I've got a weird foot, so like Nikes actually work really well for me because I have like a wide forefoot, but I have a skinny heel, so it kind of works well, you know, for most of the shoes I wear. The black Chucks I've just kind of adapted because I would wear them when I was deadlifting, and you know, sometimes it's, you know, I'm not going to just wear one pair of shoes at the gym. It's just easier just to wear them to the gym, and then that eventually I just started wearing them all the time. But yeah, I definitely bounce between those, you know, between like a pair of, you know, Nike running shoes or Air Force Ones, which is ridiculous because I'm a grown-ass man, but I still wear Air Force Ones.
Like the retro Air Force Ones?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, like I try to keep them as classy as possible, and I'm not wearing, you know, like all-white gym shoes because that was never my style. But I have some, you know, ridiculous I have some ridiculous shoes. But yeah, the Chucks work well because I could just slip them on real fast. You know, I don't know, they just work.
So getting back to jiu-jitsu, do you like think about like some of the clothes, like when you get new clothes, when you're trying them on, do you think like, okay, if I get into an altercation and I'm wearing this, is it going to hold up to the test of maybe having to take somebody down or having to, you know, tussle with somebody on the ground, or maybe even keep it standing and throw a kick?
Like,
do you ever think about that when you try something on?
Yeah, I don't buy clothes very often. But when I do, I definitely do. They call it the deep squat test. If I can go ass to grass in a pair of jeans because they got a little bit of stretch in them, and I don't have, I don't have what we call getaway sticks. I've got some pretty thick legs and, from wrestling. And so if I can do a deep squat all the way to the ground and I don't blow out the jeans, then I'm like, okay, these are going to work.
See, because I'm to the point. You remember when I was first walking in the doors here over a couple of years ago, I probably wore the tightest jeans in the gym.
Yeah, my wife would not allow me to wear jeans that are that tight.
All right, touche. But, and then I started thinking about that because like they weren't the stretchy tight jeans. And as I got to grappling more, I was thinking, okay, these are not going to be feasible if it comes to an altercation in the real world. And I have these jeans on, like something's going to have to give. It's either, going to be these pants or it's going to be, me getting beaten up by somebody. So I had to switch the pants and get a little bit looser fit and get a little stretch in them. Yeah.
I'll do the rubber guard test too. So I'll throw up rubber guard in a pair of pants. And if I can do rubber guard and I can do a deep squat, then, they're good to go.
So, all right, these will work.
Yeah. And, a lot of people now, there's companies out there that design, like athletic specific, like jeans and whatnot that have a little bit of stretch to them. One of the companies that I like supporting, that's in Maine, they make all their stuff in America. Everything from start to finish. They're making jeans, and the guys there aren't little dude. They're jiu-jitsu guys, so they're athletic. A lot of them are like former college athletes, so similar build to mine. So I'm gonna eventually switch everything over to that because they're gonna stand the test of time.
Yeah. See, I think that originally answered my question of does your style outside of the gym match jiu-jitsu? And in a way it does. So if you're purchasing clothes from guys who actually train and understand like, hey, this is what I want to wear if outside the gym because it has feasible attributes to it, then I think it does. Like, and I was wondering that because I started catching myself in like the little things I would do. It kind of relates, I think, to the gym, especially when it comes to style. Sticking with that, I want to talk MMA and MMA style. Okay. So I was thinking about this because strictly all I've done is train jiu-jitsu and wrestle. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of thinking because some of the guys, and including yourself, have been wearing the MMA gloves around here lately for grappling. And so the question would be, do you stick to training with something like MMA gloves if it's something you're going to fight with, right? So it's kind of the gi, no gi is where I'm going to go with this. But the first question is, do you think that you should train with the things that you're going to be using? So if you're going to be an MMA fighter, you should train with the gloves on quite a bit. Or, vice versa. If you're going to do a lot of gi tournaments, you should be training in the gi a lot. No gi, a lot of no gi attire.
There's a couple different thought processes on it. The way I look at part of the reason why the guys are wearing gloves is because these guys are going to start fighting. So the grips are different. Regardless of whatever, when you have an MMA glove on, you can't do the same style. You can do a similar grip, like you can still do a gable grip, you can do S grips, you can do all those things, but there's a stimulus that's different. You got, 4 ounces of padding that are around them. The wrists are much thicker because they're not only wrapped, your hands could be wrapped, maybe your hands aren't wrapped underneath it, but you definitely have the wrap that's holding the glove closed. So, the grips are different. Rear naked chokes become, harder because you have like double the size of your fist or your hand, I should say, to get underneath the neck. So there is a bunch of stimulus that changes. So I told the guys, you got to start getting accustomed to that, because if you can only finish these moves or these techniques without the gloves on and then you put the gloves on, it's going to change. So I don't want that to happen on fight day. So I want them to be accustomed to the grip differences to give them the best success in the cage. And the part of the reason why I'm wearing them is so that those same guys, because if they have gloves on and I don't, then they're going to grab my wrist. My wrist is going to be much smaller, or they're not going to be able to use the glove to help defend, or help blocking in an arm bar. So it's partly for them so that they get both sides of the coin, offense and defense, as well as, we'll see. It's looking promising that I may make my return to the cage in 2019. So we'll see. You know, I want to kind of want to do some stuff before I get too old, you know. And so yeah, so that's the plan. So it's partly for me, partly for them, you know. And yeah, we'll see.
I feel like I just need to hit the breaking news sound here. Beep,
Yeah.
beep, 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 beep. Josh gonna take a fight next year.
Yeah, that's the plan.
That's the plan.
We'll see if it happens, you know. But you know, I'm not putting tons of pressure on myself in terms of, you know, what the future unholds. But yeah, I mean, I'm not opposed to it. I never stopped loving MMA, and I never stopped. You know, I've always continued to have the will to fight. I never wanted to stop fighting. A lot of it was outside forces, you know, wanting me to stop fighting. And then a lot of it was that I had to focus on building the gym. And not that I'm, you know, slowing down with building the gym, but, you know, the gym is doing well. And so now it's time, you know, that I could, you know, take a little bit of time and, you know, take a fight. And then it's good for the guys as well, because then they have, you know, somebody who's relatively seasoned, who's got a fair amount of experience, and then they get a different look as well. So if they're accustomed to fighting me, it's probably going to be a easier run for them when they go into the cage with somebody else, when they're accustomed to me and Matt, you know, versus, you know, just the, you know, their peers per se.
Yeah, I think that's a bonus for people when you're around other like-minded individuals, you know, especially the guys here that do want to fight, when they have, you know, the guys, you know, the leaders, the top of the gym who are doing these things. They're like, okay, I may not know what I'm doing exactly right now, but if I follow these guys and watch their lead, listen to them, then I'm, you know, somebody's going to set me on the right path here. And I think that's amazing. So kudos to you, because like I always want to do it, but I always question, like, I want, you know, if I want to get punched in the face. But that always brings me to the fact that, like, I'll have dreams like where I'll be, you know, in the back of an arena, and then I'll hear my walkout music and everything playing, and I'll have my opponent. He may not have a name in my dream, but I can see a face. We'll get out to the cage. Like, I'll tell a cool story and insert it in here. So I had this dream not too long ago where I was in a locker room getting ready to compete in an MMA event. And I don't even train MMA, but I've always, you know, I've trained Jiu Jitsu for the past few years and studied martial arts on a daily basis and this and that. But I had this dream where I was in the back in a locker room and I was getting ready for like the biggest fight of my life. It was a title fight of some sort. The opponent of mine I did not recognize, but he was the champion and I was the challenger. And I remember lining up in the tunnel, getting ready to hear my walkout music. My walkout music plays. I come strutting in, doing kind of a Conor McGregor-esque, but kind of like, hey, I'm here, I'm ready to pound your face in kind of thing. I felt like the ultimate alpha male, just strutting through the forest, about to take what's mine, climb into the ring. I'm the first one out. Sit there, I listen to their entrance music. I get through it and I'm like, yeah, it's whatever, right? You know, we're about to do this thing. And it was the coolest experience ever. It's because I felt like that I've trained every aspect of martial arts and I was the best in the world at it. And I was in the UFC. I mean, it wasn't labeled the UFC in my dream, but I could tell that it was the biggest promotion in the world. And everything just clicked. It was the coolest freaking thing ever. And I pounded this dude's face in, won the title, the bell rings, they announce my name.
And the winner is...
The owner, who looked just like Dana White, I won't say it for copyright reasons, looked just like Dana White, puts the belt around my waist. I raise my hands. The crowd's going crazy. I'm the champion of the world. The whole point of that dream was I realized that I may be deeply, madly in love with martial arts and I want to be a champion, but I look at myself as a middle-aged young person, which I mean by that is like I'm in the prime of my career now. I have none of that training that I had in my dream, and I don't know if I could hang with the best in the world, But what it did give me was the ultimate sense that, hey, maybe I should pursue this passion, pursue martial arts, pursue the things that I love to do. But do you ever think about or have dreams, actual dreams of like, walking out to an arena? You've done it before, if I remember correctly. Like talk about that, like go through the motions of like what's your walkout song and what's the adrenaline like and what's processing in your head as you're backstage right before you go out.
It's hard to say exactly what the walkout would be. A lot of times, much like Matt and John, we're usually walking out to Upon a Burning Body. It's just good. It's just good metal that gets you going. But I've come out to some Metallica songs and whatnot. Usually that walk down, you're not really you're thinking about a lot of stuff, but once they call your name, then it's like it's showtime. Before you're thinking a lot. You're like, oh, am I gonna lose? I've prepared for this. There's a lot of inner monologue. Donald Cerrone has probably the best video of that, where he's got a video online where he's talking about, like, everyone's like, come on, buddy, you got this. And he's like, I just want you to shut the fuck up, And, that's all part of it. There's nerves no matter whether you're competing in jiu-jitsu, whether you're competing in MMA. It's just, and then once you kind of get in the cage, then it's just go time. That walk down, you're nervous. You're usually nervous until, like, that first punch gets thrown, and then you're like, okay, it's go time. Or that you get that first, you get cracked that first time, and you're like, okay, I'm awake now. It's go time.
Yeah, just get something to get the nerves out of you.
Yeah.
So I did a Vox Pop where I walked around and asked a bunch of random people if they could be the best at one form of martial arts in the world, what would it be? And I want to ask you that question as well. If you could be good at one form of martial arts and be the best in the world at it, what would it be and why?
I think I would just pick like Krav Maga. I've heard so much stuff about it, and I think it's just useful in any situation, just defending yourself, or just something that's good to know.
Honestly, my favorite kind of martial art is based in Okinawa, Japan, because there's a lot of that culture, that history, that reflects in modern day karate and other martial arts, that it's just a really cool thing.
So Okinawan?
Okinawan.
If I could be the best in the world at anything, it would be boxing. So if I see a terrorist on the street, they can catch these hands.
So if I could be the best at one kind of form of martial arts in the world, it would be Kung Fu, because that was the only one that I've been trained in and the one I'm most familiar with. And I like it.
And you can't say jiu-jitsu because you're a jiu-jitsu instructor. So anything but jiu-jitsu, if you could be the best in the world right now at it, martial arts, what would it be? And why?
I can't say MMA because MMA is a combo of so many martial arts. I would have to say it would be wrestling, And for me, that's the biggest thing is, we've talked about this before. I never really considered wrestling a martial art until I really dove into jiu-jitsu, and then I was like, okay, wrestling is for sure a martial art, so I would say it would be wrestling. That's partly because that was my upbringing, and that was everything in our household was that, so in terms of martial arts or a physical type of thing, it would be wrestling for sure.
If there was a UFC fighter, we'll use the biggest promotion in the world. If you had a style that you could point out to say, like, this is pretty much my style, who's that fighter?
That's hard to say.
Who's one you like to watch that you feel like you kind of replicate a lot?
Man, it's tough. I would say I love watching, guys like, Anderson and guys like Vinny Magalesh and guys like Damian Maia and guys like,
what about Ben Askren? And
yeah, Ben Askren. I would say, obviously he's a Midwest boy, so we gotta support. He's only like an hour away from us, so I'm super pumped that he's gonna be coming to the big show. I don't think my style's. It's hard to say what my style is. I would say, if anything, it would probably be that Midwest wrestler,
grind you out kind of style.
Grind you out. It's just a hard nosed style, and it's just a lot of pressure. And I would say, my striking is similar to like how the Diaz strike. I don't.
That 70% punches.
Yeah, it's just a lot of volume, and the volume, leads to openings, and constant pressure. So I would say it's similar to that in terms of, what my goal set would be for striking. I would say my grappling, I would love to emulate Ben. Obviously, he's probably arguably one of the greatest grapplers that is in the sport now, and we'll definitely see if that translates over in the UFC, which I'm pretty sure it will. So I would say it's a cool combination of that. I really like the philosophy of the Diaz boys because, getting tired in the cage sucks. And even getting tired in jiu-jitsu sucks. But, if you can kind of hold back and keep it at like 70 and then wait for that opportunity to open up to get that 85, percent shot that's going to rock them. But,
is that something like you want to do when you wear them down a little bit, or is that something like if you maybe clipped them and you had an opening, or how like what's your philosophy on that? Because I always feel like if you just wear them down, I feel like the Diaz brothers do, and then in that late second, third round, depending if it's not a championship fight, that's when they really start turning it on. But that first round, it's just like, let me hit you 70%, pepper you, just kind of be annoying, and then all of a sudden you're like, man, why am I tired? And then that's when they turn it up on you. Yeah,
I think that's definitely part of it. I think a lot of times it's, those boys want to get in there and they want to scrap, so that's part of it as well. So they want to go in there and they want to scrap, but they never really get tired. And it's really frustrating being on the receiving end of that, because you're just, there's always going to be a hole, and they're going to land one, and then they're going to land another, and then it starts to get to you, and then you're like, oh, and then, I think a lot of the battle is just a mental battle. Those dudes are so tough at the top of the heap that it just is so much. It's hard to even explain that physical pressure that you feel when you just can't get somebody off of you. I mean, you feel that in jiu-jitsu, like you're stuck in mountains and, and they're riding you and they're panda boarding you, and you're like, oh my God, I got to get this person. And it's like the anxiety builds, the way those boys do it is the same exact thing. They just keep that constant pressure. They never back down, and they just keep on going and going and going and going, and that wears on your opponent. And that's, so I think there's so many components to it, but yeah, that's definitely it. I think my favorite fighter right now, of course, I have to be biased, is Tony Ferguson, right? Tony's our, he's our boy from the system. So is Kelvin, and we have a bunch of other guys that are in associated with the 10 Planet system that are in MMA. But Tony, I think Tony has the skills to beat everybody. So it'll be interesting to see how he would do against a guy like Ben. That's a real problem. But I think Tony's ability against like a Khabib, or Tony's ability against Conor, or any one of the top guys in that division, although Ben's bigger, but somebody with like Ben's skill set, but the next weight class down would be a big problem. So
yeah, well, I mean, he's kind of a tough one, because everything he does, it's hard to even train for, I think, if you're his opponent, because the way he moves, he's super smooth. His striking is so nasty. He's got sharp elbows. He's got knees that'll smash your skull in. He's got jiu-jitsu for days. He's got wrestling. His wrestling is violent.
Yeah,
I mean, and he's got probably the best chin in all MMA. Yeah. If you ask me, I've seen that dude take some shots, and he doesn't even go into zombie mode. Like, you see some guys get hit and they're still standing, but they're just complete, like dead behind the eyes for a little bit, trying to gather their thoughts. Like, Tony's just like, nope, let me do some 12 ninja rolls and I'm out of this, and then let's throw down again.
Yeah, and I think Tony's biggest weapon is he's really long for that weight class. So he can keep himself really, nobody's really safe in there, but he has the advantage that he can strike in places where, like, he can probably punch in most of his opponent's kicking range, and then he can kick on the outside where they really can't touch him because he's just so long. So, and guys like Ben Saunders are like that too, like really rangy, and that allows you to kind of stay safe in areas where, and then you're dangerous to your opponent. So, and it, styles make it too. A lot of guys want to clinch, a lot of guys want to stay to the outside and pick people apart. A lot of guys are counter fighters. So it gets, that's the fun part of MMA is it's so, it's so diverse.
Yeah. What weight do you want to fight at? And what's the training camp going to look like for you if you have adequate time, if you had the time you wanted?
Training camp would, if I wanted to do it right, the big thing with like overtraining.
Is it like 8 weeks? Is it a set schedule? Yeah,
I would definitely want to do at least 8 weeks. I train 6 days a week. So, it's, I'm definitely getting a fair amount of training in. I would just have to ramp up my cardio, which I would, I'd probably do in the morning, before my kids get up.
Go into detail. Like, are you doing road work? What are you doing? Doing triathlons, marathons?
No, nothing like that. I'm not a huge fan of crazy running, although I think there's definitely advantages to that. I grew up doing stairs in wrestling, and football players did stairs. So that's like, it's like a good place for me to be, is to do stairs. Things like the Aerodyne bike are huge. Things like swim sprints are huge, so I would focus on things like that. And then
hang on, I'm going to say, bring back, if you do that and you start doing the runs, bring back where you upload the videos to at least our group chat of you running and like giving motivational speeches. Because honestly, that really kept me motivated and that got me running again. And I've been running ever since.
Yeah. I love trail running. I love getting out there because it's easier on the joints, But yeah, there were some fun videos where I was like throwing a log on my shoulders and just talking trash about everybody being lazy. I was just having fun because I love you guys. So, so I want to, give you guys a bunch of shit. But
I think it motivated quite a few of us.
Yeah, I hope so.
You got to bring those back.
The fun thing for me is I'm a big believer of leading by example. And not so much because then it allows you guys to see that like, oh, okay, coach is in the shit too. It's not like he's just not sitting there, with a clipboard going, I want you to do this. Like, no, I'm out there with you doing it and I'm showing you what I'm doing and, not really giving you I'm trying to eliminate the ability to make excuses to not do it, because if the old man, even though I'm not that old, but if the old man can do it, like, why can't the young bucks do it, and if why can't I help motivate you to come into the gym the extra day to put in that extra work, even if you're not rolling hard, but you're just coming in and getting more reps. Like a lot that's a lot of it is just being in it every day and taking it all in. And, that's definitely part of it. So
can we all pitch in here at the gym and purchase a small bear like Khabib and wrestle this thing? Can that be part of the training camp too?
We should just go over to the zoo and see what happens.
Hey, we could just tell them we're volunteering.
Yeah, we're just volunteering.
I like that.
Yeah.
We gotta do some unconventional stuff. Like, look at Tony. Like, his unconventional way of rehabbing, he's gonna be a world champion again. Yeah. So how are we gonna get there? We got to do unconventional stuff. Yeah. Follow the leaders. We'll do what Tony does. We'll wrestle bears like Khabib. This is not a lose-lose. Unless the bear eats somebody, then this is a very much lose-lose. And hopefully he eats one of the littler guys, and us bigger guys are okay.
Yeah, we'll just wing one of them. We'll just clip one as we're running away and kind of sacrifice one, and we'll see what happens.
I'm gonna look into that. I'm gonna go to like Lincoln Park Zoo and just be like, hey, can we wrestle your bears if we bring a
Do you have any baby bears that don't have big claws?
Yeah. Can we trim some claws and wrestle some bears?
Yeah.
They got to be domesticated enough that they're not gonna.
I would say we could do that with like chimpanzees or whatever, but they would destroy us.
They'd rip your face off.
Yeah, for sure.
I've watched the news.
And other stuff.
I've watched the news. Speaking of watching the news, did you see? It was probably about a month and a half ago now. The mother who got in trouble from the police for using, I'm air quoting here for the listeners, jiu-jitsu moves on her son to take his cell phone away, and she was in trouble for using jiu-jitsu moves, air quotes.
No, I don't watch the news, so I didn't see that. But
what's your thoughts on that? So if your kid is being out of control and you did, I don't even remember what the jiu-jitsu move that she did, but basically she just took his back, I think, and choked him and took the phone away.
It's kind of, on one hand, it's really funny. Like, well, first off, there's a bunch of layers to this. Number one, if your kid is that much out of control that you have to like physically grapple them to the ground take away their phone, there's other things going on there, right? So it's like Kurt Osiander says, you fucked up a long time ago, you know? So there's a bunch of other stuff way back that, you know, could have been done before that escalation of that happens. Now, you know, I definitely could see, you know, where, you know, maybe if the child has behavioral disorders, that, you know, they become violent, and then you have to protect yourself. In terms of getting the phone away, I don't know about that, but like one of our students who won't be named, deals with kids that, you know, like the behavioral disorder kids, and they bite and they spit and they do that, and he uses jiu-jitsu techniques to control them, but to keep them safe so that they don't hurt themselves, you know, and he gets the message across. And there's like curriculum that they have or techniques that people in that line of work learn, but they're not as good as the understanding of how the human body works. And it's more so not even to you know, hurt them, it's to control them and keep them safe. And it's the same thing that we talk about, you know, with our buddies that are police officers that train here. It's, you can feel when somebody grabs you and you're like, oh, they know what they're doing, versus when someone grabs you and they're just, you know, there's a definitely different feel. It's almost comforting on one hand because you don't feel like you're necessarily in danger per se, because, and I think it a lot has to do with how calm they are. You can feel their energy, how calm they are. They're not freaking out.
The experience of them being there.
I would be at the club and I would walk up and you know, see a situation happening, and I would just look at the person and I would tell them, why are you breathing so heavy? And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, dude, I can see how heavy you're breathing. You have so much adrenaline running through you right now. You're so scared right now. And look at me, I'm completely calm. So let's talk about this, you know, because you're going to freak out and make a really bad choice. And that's what I do every day. And I'm going to keep you safe, but I'm going to control you. And a lot of times that would, you know, because people wouldn't necessarily think that I could see how their body was moving, to know that they had adrenaline just surging through their body, you know?
Yeah. See, I thought about something similar to that, as I always wondered, when you can always tell when somebody's new to jiu-jitsu, especially because of how tense they are and how much they're not breathing. And now I think about it when, you know, whether I'm just rolling or just even doing drilling and, you know, technique, is how relaxed we're all staying. And you know, a lot of that's you coaching us through it. But you can tell when people aren't used to altercations, whether, you know, you're in a bar or whether you're, you know, hanging out with your buddies in the living room and you're just messing with each other and they have no experience. You can kind of, you can start to really see it, but when you first start, you can't see it. And I think a lot of it goes to, I can't remember if we talked about it last time we talked, of just reading people's body language and this and that. But that's very similar. And you're talking about being all tense, and that's what it is. That's how you know when somebody's not used to altercations or being in something physical that they don't really understand, is by how tense and by how short their breaths are. And I think that's huge. But I just took us down a huge rabbit hole. I want to get back to MMA and what's a camp? Is it 8 weeks? What's it going to look like for you?
It all depends on when, you know, the potential fight is. I'd like to get, in order for me to be where I'd like, it would have to be a minimum of 6 weeks. I'd like to get 8, maybe even 10, you know, depending on what it is. You know, but I think the point would be to not overtrain, but just to get the timing and all that. You know, you're going to get into a cage. You have to have punches thrown at your head, and you have to spend adequate time to work on your cage control in terms of, you know, walking people into corners and whatnot, and cutting off angles and finding those openings to find success in your striking and or in your grappling. And that just comes from doing it. And just, it's like, you know, they talk about lifting weights, it's time under tension. It's just, all that it is just getting the experience, spending, it's just more reps. Like everything we do in jiu-jitsu is like, you got to get reps in having punches thrown at your face, and you got to get reps in, you know, seeing the angles and seeing the openings and in the chaos, you know.
So are you going to do any sparring or a lot of sparring leading up to this?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm not a huge proponent of heavy sparring towards the head. because you don't want to get knocked out before the fight. And you don't want to take tons of damage, but like your body can take a pretty good beating, so like the Dutch style of easy to the head, hard to the body is definitely important. So we've already started training some stuff to kind of ramp everything up, and then I would just set a physical structure and say, okay, here's the days that we're doing it, and have the boys come in and try to time it to where everybody's on the same schedule or close to it. So but that kind of already started. That's not public, not like public knowledge, but
it is now, my friend.
It is now, but it's nothing on the schedule. We've got a bunch of dudes that either have fought before or, are interested in fighting. So, that's kind of something that we're doing for them, separate from the normal jiu-jitsu class. And then like what I did is I encourage them to, come and continue to learn and do all those other things, because you may find those openings in a path that we're doing or whatnot, and a lot of the guys that are rolling with their teammates, they're now adjusting their jiu-jitsu for more advantageous positions for MMA,
Yeah, I've kind of noticed that in the gym. I was like, there's something going on here.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I had to talk to my sources inside the gym, and they informed me they were. So what you're talking about with me now and you taking a fight wasn't a surprise to me. How does it feel to be, back into striking again and all that? Does it feel like riding a bike, like you've been away for a little bit and now it's like, okay, I'm getting this, or did you just pick up right away?
No, I never stopped striking. I just stopped teaching striking, I taught for a really long time, and the guys at the time weren't interested in it. And I said, well, okay, I could either continue to have these striking classes that, my team, doesn't necessarily want to attend, or I could open up more jiu-jitsu classes, different skill level classes. And I made the decision to say, okay, that's what I'm going to do, and I was also, before I was limited to the schedule that I had because I was still working a day job. Now that I've got a little bit more freedom in terms of that, I could tweak what we're doing, and open up those time slots for the guys to get that work in. So
how many fighters would it take for you to open up a MMA slot or a striking slot or whatever it is you would want to do? How many interested people?
It's hard to say, because I have currently right now, we've got six guys, not including Matt, that either have fought or are interested in fighting. So I'm working with those guys. It's just trying to get them all dialed in on the same schedule. And that's partly because we don't have a set schedule for it. We're kind of like, hey guys, can you guys get some work in this week? Because there's nothing on the books right now. Nobody has any fights. So we're just getting the time in when they can. And then I've talked to all of them and said, okay, well, once it's go time, we're going to set this schedule. And then this is, fight team training. This is the time slot for fight team training. I've hinted to them and said, okay, this is probably when we're going to do it. And most of the guys are like, yeah, I can make that work. So we just haven't rolled it out completely.
So at being a coach to a lot of these guys, are you talking nutrition with them and things like that, what they maybe should be avoiding, food wise, or what maybe they should eat, and ask them like, how's their body working? Have you dove into any of that with any of them?
Not particularly. I mean, I've definitely given advice on training outside of the gym in terms of, extra work. The advantage, most of these guys are wrestlers. Most of these guys are athletes. So, like, they're coming in. They're not, like a new guy who's never done anything. Most of these guys are relatively seasoned, are already in pretty decent shape in terms of, the baseline that they're starting out with. So that's definitely a good thing. Most of these guys are training hardcore jiu-jitsu multiple times a week already, so so it's just adding like another class, it's adding another skill set. So and we've had those, I can't legally give nutritional advice, but I can definitely, most of the guys at here have like, some guys are on keto, some guys are no carbs, some guys are eating meat only, so like everybody kind of does their own thing in terms of that. And I'm not going to tell them one way or the other, because everybody's body's different. So maybe what works for me doesn't work for them, and maybe what works for them doesn't work for me. Like I did keto for a while and it just didn't work well for me. But I find, good, everybody benefits from eating clean. That's one of those things where it doesn't really matter however your body processes this or processes that. Everybody does well eating clean. So I'll definitely suggest that to everybody is eat clean, fruits, vegetables, carbs that are good for you in terms of, or, like starches, if you have the choice between French fries or a sweet potato, not a French fry sweet potato, although those are delicious.
I make some pretty awesome sweet potato wedges.
Yeah. So, if you're making it yourself, then that's going to be, if you're like cooking them in the oven, with, butter or bacon fat or whatever, whatever it is.
What's up, everybody? I'm interrupting this episode to let you guys know about my friends over at Neighborhood Guys podcast. They are two friends of mine, Eddie and Danny. They have a cool podcast that's all about Chicago. So if you're interested in my podcast, they talk everything from Chicago, sports, life, what's going on in each neighborhood, who the police are arresting, all the good stuff. So if you enjoy my podcast, you're going to enjoy Neighborhood Guys. Eddie's going to be a guest on Head Kick Radio here soon. So once again, if you enjoy mine, go check them out at Neighborhood Guys, wherever you get your podcast. So whether it's iTunes, Spotify, look them up, have a laugh, and get ready to catch Eddie on Head Kick Radio in the near future. Thank you guys, and back to the show. Where do you see the gym by the end of 2019?
I don't know. We've got a really good thing going here. Although, like everything else, I would love to have a super gym. I'm a huge planner, so everything's got to fit into place. And I've also seen tons of facilities not really come and go, but like they get really big and then they have to get small, and they get really big, or they're reliant on one thing. So I think slow growth in terms of, massive facilities and whatnot. I think that's the right play. I'm an operations guy. I've always been an operations guy for 20 years. My dad's an ops guy. So for me, it's, keeping the operations lean. And that gives freedom to do, other things. So, but I would like to be in a larger facility, but we'll see what happens. That's so contingent on so many variables. The hard part is that people come and go in jiu-jitsu as much as I'd love for them all to stay. Some people fall out of love with jiu-jitsu. Some of your teammates who have been on this podcast that, they're not training right now and they know who they are. So, there's those scenarios. We've got a lot of new people and we've got a lot of older guys. For a while, the gym was like the original 15 guys that we had, and then there was nobody for 2 years, and then we were bumped up to 35 guys, and it was this next wave and this next wave. Now it's pretty consistent. We have new guys coming in, and new guys, some people falling off, and that's kind of the nature of the beast. We don't have a huge, massive gym. I don't have 300 students like a lot of these other gyms, and I we talked about it before. I don't know how sustainable a 300 person gym is for the type of facility that I want and for the culture that I want. Sure, everybody would like that huge, big, fat paycheck and, you got all this money to mess around with, but I don't need any of that. I'd much rather have a team with 150 guys that we have a good family relationship on and that I can, devote my energy towards, and I don't have to go home and go, oh man, how are we going to make rent this month? Because my rent is $6,000 because I have a, 10,000 square foot facility. I don't want to put that pressure on me to take away from what I'm doing here, which is teaching you guys jiu-jitsu. I don't want that to cloud, I don't want to sit up at night and go, how are we going to pay the rent, when I should be sitting up at night thinking about what's the next cool jiu-jitsu path or, where I want to take the program and whatnot. So.
Yeah. Well, the reason I kind of asked that is keeping it in the system. We have the On It Academy that has 10th Planet Austin in there. Mm-hmm. You look at people like Uriah Faber, who has, Ultimate Fitness and has, treadmills, other weights, gyms, and of course the whole mats, the MMA, the jiu-jitsu, the wrestling, everything. Do you picture yourself maybe one day having something similar to anything like that? Or maybe even if it's a smaller version where maybe you're connected to just another regular gym, like LA Fitness or something, and maybe have you ever thought about like where you kind of want this overall to go?
I mean, sure. I always think about those things. I owned a long time ago. It was like 2011. I had a CrossFit affiliate. And so I was doing the jiu-jitsu and MMA and running CrossFit. And it was, although it was a really cool facility and it offered us a lot of, or it offered the students a lot of really fun things to do, it's hard to focus on all that. So if I was going to do something like that, it'd be different than if I had, 1,000 square feet and I just had a bunch of equipment and said, okay, guys, you guys can use this at your leisure. That's different than if I'm going to be running fitness programs, or I would have to bring somebody in to like run a fitness program out. And I don't, I'm not, I've been burned a bunch of times in the past, so I'm hesitant to bring in somebody else, and trust that they're going to actually do what they, what they need to do. And then it becomes a lot more risk too. Then I have to either sublet out to them, or I have to carry that extra space, so I would much rather do everything in-house, in terms of I'd rather bring guys up and, teach class and whatnot. That could definitely happen in the future, but, it's not necessary. It's like having a Thai program and, going, oh, I need Thai bags. You don't need Thai bags for a Thai program. You need bodies. You can throw on shin pads and get Thai pads and do the same work within reason. There's some advantages that are on having Thai bags, but you don't need it,
Yeah. See, I'm glad you kind of talked about that a little bit, because like this podcast, for example, I've been at it for half a year, a little over half a year now. I'm not sure, maybe half a year. And I realized like, when I first started out, like I had all this energy to keep up with the social media, the scheduling, recording the podcast, editing the podcast, the plans to make it bigger, do the phone lines, which is happening very soon. And after a while, I'm losing momentum a little bit, as I could call it. Do you find it hard being one person running this gym? Do you feel like there's times you just kind of come in waves where you just lose momentum and then you catch it again and then you just ride it and then you just lose momentum? And how do you handle that?
I don't, because I love it so much, and that's really what it is I love doing it so much and I have the passion to do it. So that's why I do it. So that's why I'll not sleep for 2 or 3 days and do what I need to do, because I love it so much. And this is what I want to do. And this is what I do with my life. And that's important to me. So that's why I do it. Are there times where you get discouraged? Sure. Like, if I lost a bunch of students, I'd be like, damn. But I'm never like, oh, I'm defeated. It's like, all right, what do I need to do to change? What do I need to do to progress? And that's more of what it is. So like when I feel like, maybe if I feel like I'm losing a little bit of steam, I'm the first one to be like, nah, motherfuckers, get back to work,
So how often do you reassess or reevaluate when you feel like, okay, maybe I'm losing a little bit of steam? How do you just think like, do I need to change it up in a way? Like, what's your thought process?
I try to figure out why I'm feeling that way. And that's the big thing is if I don't know why I'm feeling that, then I'm like, okay, I need to sit down and figure out what this is, because I can't just like shoot in the dark. You know what I mean? I need to have a target. So if I don't know what's going on, or if I don't know why I'm like whatever feeling that way, it becomes a problem. But once I can figure out why I'm doing it, or like what the stimulus is, or, what's making me feel that way, then I can formulate a plan and formulate an attack and then go from there.
So that I think that's the big thing for me. Sometimes like I won't catch myself when I'm hitting like that lull, as I like to call it,
Mm-hmm.
and then just be like, hey, like, why are you feeling this way, or why are you doing this? You're not sticking to the plan here. You're kind of deviating a little bit. Get back on track. And then sometimes I think a lot of it is I'm not looking like, okay, what's the next goal again? Like, and I think that's why it's important to write those things down. Are you big into writing things down or daily journaling?
I don't daily journal, not because I don't think it's I think it's a great thing. I don't do it.
Do you write your goals down for like short-term, long-term or anything, and then glance at it every once in a while?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely do that. I'll make a note, but I have the freedom to think about stuff all day long. Like all day long, I'm driving. So I'm always thinking about that stuff. So every single day I'm thinking about it. So I don't necessarily have to write it down. Although sometimes putting things to paper is important, or whatever, on a whiteboard, whatever it is. I think that's sometimes it's a good practice to do. But seeing that written down doesn't necessarily motivate me one way or the other. I could look at that every single day, and if I don't do what I need to do, it's not going to change anything. So I need to just motivate myself to do the things that I need to do. Yeah, and having that written down isn't going to necessarily help me.
Well, minus the motivation, does it just keep you on track?
Doesn't keep me on track. I think for some people it definitely does. Yeah, that doesn't keep me on track. But that's just me. I'm a weirdo.
How close am I to talking you to building a little podcast studio in the basement here? Do a 10th Planet podcast. Now that you're on record, everybody's listening.
I don't know. I mean, I'm definitely a believer of the abundance theory, and Rogan talks about that, and there's always content that's needed, or people will always want to take in content. It's amazing the amount of podcasts I listen to per week. It's insane. It's basically at this point, podcasts and audiobooks are the only media I take in, other than the weird video, like jiu-jitsu videos you find on the internet or on Facebook or whatever. So I mean, that's almost all the content that I take in. That being said, it's the same reason why I haven't come out with a subscription, for this is Josh's moveset. There's limited stuff. I know you can always come up with new things to talk about, but and then here's the other thing. Everything that I do in my life, I have to love. I have to be in love with it. So if I'm not in love with doing a podcast, I'm not going to do it, because I'm going to be doing that podcast a disservice. You know what I mean? So I'd have to really sit down and think about if that's something that I want to do, that I want to put my energy towards. And I'm always the person that who the hell wants to listen to me talk? Of course my students do, and that's a captive audience, but there's way better people that are more qualified to do better things out in the world than me, whoever, you know what I mean?
Right. I want you to know, since I do get to see statistics, you are the most viewed episode, downloaded and viewed episode.
But it's because it's a captive audience. It's not fair.
But that's but the point of it is, we're talking about content is king. Do you think content would help you, build some of these things? If you wanted a little bit bigger place and this and that, draw people in and bring more attraction.
It's possible, because I know that's how a lot of guys do it. It's hard to say. I don't know exactly if me having a podcast is going to bring more people in. I don't think it has a direct correlation. I mean, maybe it would. We get everybody from Rogan, so I kind of just let Rogan do his thing, and then people find us because they're fans of Rogan. But other guys have podcasts, and it goes well. Some of the formats work really, really well for what they're trying to do. I don't know. It's hard to say. I've got a bunch of friends that have some really successful podcasts, and I have a bunch of friends that had really successful podcasts and don't do them anymore.
Yeah. Because I was going to say, if you had, your thing going here, there's a lot of cool people that even roll through here. Mm-hmm. The guys at the gym are hilarious, and, promote them, especially the MMA fighters and things like that. I was just thinking, and you're a good talker. It's not like you're just sitting here with nothing to say. You could fill this whole show, and I could just be producing this whole thing. You could be talking to somebody and just letting people know who you are, and it makes them comfortable with, you, and then they feel like they know you a bit. They can come in and start learning jiu-jitsu, or, maybe in the future, MMA, whatever it is you're doing. And I think that it feels kind of weird. It's kind of like the social media thing we're talking about. You don't like doing it, but if you didn't do it, like you said, then maybe people wouldn't know that you existed. And that's kind of a weird thing, is we always kind of, I think as humans, we need to feel kind of connected to something, or that we understand something a little bit before we just go and introduce ourselves to that situation. And I'm to the point now, after doing this a while, I've had people that I didn't even know listen to this thing that would come up to me and talk to me and say, hey, this is really cool, or, and talk about a guest perhaps I had on, and they're like, I really like that person, and strike up a random conversation and, ask about the gym, and I'm still trying to talk people into coming and things like that. And I'm thinking, man, none of this would be possible if I didn't have the podcast and things like that. And then that's when I started thinking, I was like, I need to reach out to Josh and be like, hey, you need to think about this, because you're a good talker, and very likable guy. And I was like, this would be good for business for you.
It's
and
funny. Everyone thinks I'm an asshole.
I don't know who these everyone's are, but
I think people
I've
that
known
don't.
you.
I think people that don't know me. I think there's, like if you see me at competition, I'm in a pretty intense mode. I'm coaching. I'm there to coach. If you see me at comp and I'm competing, I'm not that I'm a different guy, but you're in a different mindset. There was a couple scenarios. Like the way I look at it is like, who am I? I'm just some random brown belt. And some people would say, oh, you helped kind of create the 10th Planet system and make it somewhat viable in Chicago within, and some people would believe that, so I could say, okay, yeah, I definitely had a piece of the puzzle to that. But I'm just some brown belt from Chicago that does a style of jiu-jitsu that, now a couple other guys do it, but back in the day, like nobody really did it. So, but like, I'm not a world champion, I'm not, so it's like, it's hard for me to go, okay, why is somebody going to listen to me, when there's so many other qualified people out there, but that could be my thing. That's the same thing as how I get weirded out by having my name on, a freaking logo,
with the Passini grappling.
Yeah. For me, that's a weird thing. And, that's maybe as I digest that and become more comfortable with that, it's possible that maybe things could change, and, a lot of it is like, here's the way I look at it. Like, you want to get the best Josh, it's not listening to a podcast, it's coming to class. That's really when I'm at my best. That's when I'm performing my best, in terms of, I'm not a professor now in that sense, but like, I love teaching and I love sharing knowledge. So the best Josh that you'll ever get is the Josh that's teaching class. And that's what I love the most. And, the cool thing was I was at an immersion camp in Maine, the Origin Immersion Camp. So shameless plug for them. But I was there with, guys like Dean Lister and Jocko and Echo, and obviously Jocko has a podcast there. And Jocko and I talked, and he's like, man, people want to, like, they want to come and hang out, and they want to meet Jocko and all that. And it's like, dude, then come to the camp. Like, come to the places, come to the gym, so it's hard to, it's hard for me to go, yeah, I want you to listen to my podcast, but if you want to get the best me, you just come to the gym, so it's one of those things.
What about your thoughts of like delegating those responsibilities to somebody like me, some of the other guys in the gym, to those, especially those days when you don't want to come and talk on these things, but that it still brings people in? Because if somebody's hearing it and they're thinking, hey, these guys seem pretty cool, let me go check out 10th Planet. Like, what is your thing? Like, what if you, I'm not saying like divvy out like your social media and have people post this and that. Like, obviously you'll reshare things that, some of the guys will do. But do you think that maybe you should like let some of the crew take some control and some pride into this thing and help you build it?
The hard part with that is I've done this in the past, and not for lack of anything is that they will never, like they can be themselves, but they will never be me, and they can't technically share my vision because it's my vision, and I could tell you what my vision is, but you'll never be able to live my vision because you're not me. You could live your vision, or your version of how I'm describing the vision, but that's when it becomes really hard. The cool thing about jiu-jitsu is very personal for everybody, and as much as I could say I want you to do this, I can never possibly ever believe that you'll be me. You know what I mean? You'll do it your way, and not that there's anything wrong with that, but you'll never do it my way per se. It's like me, like I don't teach. I can teach what Eddie teaches, but it's gonna be Josh's version of Eddie's techniques. And I think it's a great thing. I think that's what makes it so sweet, because there's a nuance to it. It's different. It's not exactly the same. Like, I don't want to be a robot, like, and just pump out, all that stuff. It's going to be my interpretation of it, and that's the same way. So that's part of the reason why I don't delegate a lot of that stuff out there. Although, like, for example, Jake, does the website. So we're like rebuilding the website right now. So Jake understands my vision, because we spent so much time together, so that he kind of knows what I'm thinking in terms of, you know, like apparel, and he knows what I'm thinking in terms of how I want the site to be, because we had so many conversations over all the years. So I can go, hey, I want you to do this, and he hits it out the park. Like, he knows, you know. So that just hasn't translated to all the other stuff yet. So, but Jake definitely helps me out with all that stuff, you know, like social media and whatnot. So.
Okay. Yeah. So I was just wondering, I was like, do you delegate anything? Because if owning a business, running a business, and doing every, you know, facet of it, it wears on you, and it weighs, you know.
It doesn't.
It doesn't hamper you from maybe teaching if you're doing everything. Okay. So
not at all.
Figure out a good balance then.
Yeah. Well, and here's the other thing is like, okay, so I'm at the gym from 5 o'clock to, let's say, 10 o'clock, maybe 11 o'clock. Okay. That's 6 hours. There's a 24-hour day. Let's say you need 8 hours of sleep for you.
For most of us.
Let's say you need 8 hours of sleep. That's 14 hours. That gives you 10 hours to do other things, right?
You're sounding a lot like Gary Vee right now. Keep going.
No, I mean, it's, you know, there's a lot of time throughout the day to do other things. There's time to get a workout in. There's time to do social media. There's time to learn. You know, the problem is that, you know, you just want to go. Everybody just wants to go and show up and teach class and work their 5 hours in a day. No, I shouldn't say everybody. A lot of people just do that, right? And then they're like, I'm going to play video games. I'm going to chill. And hey, if that works, that's fantastic. But there's a lot of time throughout the day that other things can be done. You know, if there's, you know, recently I was helping out one of my students on job sites, you know, so I had the time to go and work, you know, a decent day on a job site and then come and teach. So that shows that there's time throughout the day that with proper delegation and proper discipline that you can do other things.
Yeah. Time management's a big thing.
Yeah. I can sit on my ass. I did it today. I wasn't feeling well, so I just chilled, and I literally watched jiu-jitsu videos from 9 o'clock in the morning till 2 in the afternoon without moving. Didn't eat, didn't do anything. And I literally looked at the clock and I was like, yo, you just wasted the whole day. So you know what I'm going to do when I'm going to go home? I'm going to actually do some real work.
Oh, I thought you were about to say watch more jiu-jitsu videos.
No, I'm going to go home and I'm going to do the work that I put off today because I didn't feel well. But you know what? I probably needed that. I probably needed
a
that.
rest day.
I needed a you know, a 5-hour break from going and chopping wood and stuff like that, you know, and you know, that's what I did today. And I feel really lazy. That 5 hours is a long time. That's 300 minutes. No, is that 5? Yeah, it's 300 minutes that I wasted doing nothing. Because I really didn't get anything out of that. I wasn't like learning new techniques. I was just watching cool videos. That was a waste of time.
I mean, well, is it? If you learned something,
I didn't.
You didn't learn anything?
I didn't learn a single thing. So that's why I'm like, you know what? That was a waste of time.
Yeah, I was trying to help you out there, but you definitely wasted some time.
I pissed away 5 hours, and you know, whatever. Some people be like, that's cool, you pissed away 5 hours, but for me, that's 5 hours of wasted productivity that I could have done other things. You know, and that's, you know,
gotten a little bit better in something.
Yeah, you know, I got better at sitting on my ass and watching videos. You know,
man, I kind of feel like I wasted the day too, even though I went to work. It was one of those times. Like, I didn't have any homework or anything special to take care of. I'm all caught up. And I was sitting there in my office. And I had a little bit of downtime. And I was thinking, do I do something productive? Like Google something maybe to help the podcast or something. And I mean, I did a little bit. I re-listened to our last episode just so I tried to stay away from, you know, some of the same questions and things like that. And hear if you were to say something, we could build upon it. But then other than that, I wasted time on YouTube myself.
That's okay.
So
maybe that works for you, and that's cool because
it's
you're
a rabbit
not me.
hole. Yeah.
But I'm sitting here on this side, you know, on this side of the table or mat, whatever you want to call it, and I'm saying I wasted 5 hours that I could have done other shit.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I did too. So maybe it's just the day.
Yeah, could have been that. This was up at, you know, 4:45 this morning. I was up, and it was snowing, cold as fuck, and I moved my truck, and I'm like, I'm gonna go right back to bed. Where normally I'd be like, you know what, maybe I'm going to rip out a workout before the kids wake up, you know, or maybe I'm going to do some admin shit before the kids wake up, you know. So, but I don't know, that's me. I don't know. I don't know whether that's learned behavior, whether that's, you know, whatever it is.
If Josh is in fight camp in 2019, and you're up at 4:45 in the morning, I want to see watch picks like Jocko does, and then just post them, and I want to see who posts first.
Oh, man,
you or Jocko.
The watch picks. Because we're 2 hours ahead of Jocko, every day that I'm
Wait,
up.
no, he's an hour ahead of us because he's in Maine.
No, he's in LA. He's
Oh,
in
I
San
thought he was-
Diego.
I thought he was in Maine.
No. So Origin, part of the company that he owns, is in Maine, right? So they're an hour ahead, but we're 2 hours ahead of. So every day that I'm up at 4:45, I want to send him a message back. What are you doing sleeping? It's 2:45 there.
And there's some days he posts at 2:45 a.m.
Listen, I spent some days with Jocko, and I can attest that even at that jiu-jitsu camp, he was up at 4:45 in the morning, doing workouts, and then, but I didn't see him. There were a couple days where he was out, later, but there were some days we were out till like 2 a.m. At the camp, and a lot of those guys weren't. So it's like a balancing act. Like I'll stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning, but then I'm gonna wake up at 7. That type of scenario. So it may be the same amount of work time in a day, just on a different schedule. So maybe waking up, for me, getting up at 4:19, in the morning, maybe just doesn't work because I'm getting that extra work, or whatnot. So
Are you more productive in the morning or the evenings?
generally I'm more productive in the evenings. I'm used to kind of operating everything at night. So it is what it is, which is interesting too, because he gets up at 4 a.m, but he talked about how all the time when they were operating during the night.
Yeah.
So, it's
Do you think he goes to bed early?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he goes to bed early. So, but
Yeah,
maybe there's days where, I'm sure like everybody else, there's days where you don't go to bed early, and sometimes you don't go to bed at all.
That's true, especially in his former line of work of being a Navy SEAL.
Yeah.
But any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
No, I mean, just everybody just, keep trucking along and keep making good choices and make the right the good decisions for your life, and, keep training jiu-jitsu, because I think that component makes life easier. And I think be patient with the journey. I think that's a big thing. Is I think everyone's rushing to get that next belt. And what you don't take the time to smell the roses? Is that old adage? I think when everybody's in a rush to accomplish something, sometimes you don't get to enjoy the journey. So I think everybody needs to enjoy the journey, and whatever that is, whether that's a new profession, or whether that's jiu-jitsu, or whether that's life, or whether that's being a parent, or whatever that is, enjoy the journey, because guess what? Tomorrow's not guaranteed. You know what I mean? So, you got to enjoy everything. And, if you screwed up today, try not to screw up tomorrow. If you made some bad choices, fix those, say sorry and give hugs and, and all that stuff. And, try to, the biggest thing is for me, I don't want to live with regrets. And that's part of the reason why I want to take another fight. I don't want to be 60 years old and going, man, I had the opportunity and I could have, and I didn't. So I think that's probably the worst thing. And that's definitely a Gary V thing, but that's true. Nobody wants to sit there and go, woulda, coulda, shoulda, when they're 70 years old. Nobody wants to do that, because then you're going to be fucking miserable.
Yeah. You just want to go find out.
Yeah. I would, what's the worst thing that happens? You try it and you fail, or it's way better to fail or succeed at something than to just not do shit and then regret it.
Yeah. I'm talking about, if you have a bad day. I had a coach, he used to say, his famous saying was, don't compound the problem.
Yeah.
If today wasn't your best day, fix it, make tomorrow better. Then, see how long you can keep the streak going, kind of thing. But if today's bad, don't make tomorrow just as bad. Just say, hey, maybe if I slacked off on something I should have been eating that was healthy and I didn't, don't eat bad, 2 days in a row, for example. Don't compound that problem. Josh, plug the gym. Let everybody know where they can find you.
I do have to say one thing, because
Okay.
it just popped into my brain.
We could do this all day.
The saying that I have on the wall, the only easy day was yesterday. It's definitely a Navy SEAL thing, but I really think about that every single day. If you had a shit day today, well, guess what? Tomorrow's going to be worse.
Yeah. The only
you know what I mean?
Was the easy day.
Yeah, today was the easy day. So when and when those easy days come, it's okay. But I tell myself the only easy day was yesterday. And I tell my kids that. My kids, having an issue at school, and I'm like, dude, it's been in front of your face your whole life. The only easy day was yesterday. Yeah, I get today. At the end of the day, they're like, oh, I had a horrible day at school. I'm like, guess what? Tomorrow's gonna be worse, but that doesn't mean you're gonna quit. And that's the big thing, is not quitting.
Yeah, we need another one in the gym that says "kill the quit."
Yeah,
Just so I can look at it when I'm rolling, especially, and I'm just like, don't get lazy now. I know you're tired.
Yeah,
don't, kill that quit. Keep going.
Yeah, that's definitely a good one. But yeah, for me, like every single day, it's the only easy day was yesterday, and it is whatever it is, it just keeps me going. Whether that's because every single day we went into wrestling practice and it was worse, and you're like, man, yesterday was not as bad as this. But then you're never mad at that. Like you're pumped about it the next day. And I would remember walking into practice the next day and going, today is gonna suck ass, but super fucking pumped about it. And that doesn't make any sense. But life's kind of like that. If you get pumped, if you know that tomorrow's gonna be somewhat shitty, or there's gonna be, and I think a lot of it is components that, like, there's a bad part of the day, right? This component of the day sucked, right? This was a shit part of the day. Well, your whole day didn't suck. Maybe you got a free coffee. Maybe that smoke show that you've been looking at or that you've been running into, you're on the same train with, gave you a look today and acknowledged your existence. But then you had a shit day at work. Well, what are you going to be thinking about, that shit day at work or the smoke show that you've been looking at for a week that just now realized you exist?
That 5 seconds of eye contact just made your day.
Just made your day, right? So I think, don't compound, it goes back, don't compound the problem. Like, yeah, work sucked ass today, but you know what, maybe jiu-jitsu is fucking awesome today. And maybe on your way home from jiu-jitsu, that whatever, you saw a new hot chick that you never seen before, or you got somebody who's like, hey, you look like you're working hard today. Let me, whatever, let me pay for your bus fare, whatever it is,
Yeah. See, and we're never going to end this episode now.
That's all right.
To me, I always say time heals everything, and time fixes everything, and time proves everything. Because it's like, if you come to the gym and you put in the time, you're eventually going to get good if you stick with it, no matter what. Like I think anything it's impossible.
In life, you do it, you're going to get good.
Just like if you have bad habits and you spend a lot of time doing bad habits, you're going to have bad habits.
You're going to get really fucking good at doing bad habits.
Right. If you have a lot of good habits and you spend a lot of time doing good things, you're going to be really good. And it's like, you have heartbreak. What heals it? Time.
Yep.
And time, to me, like, not to make this a religious thing, but time to me is like the ultimate, like, judge and jury of everything.
Sure.
It's, you are what you invest in, whether, and you are what you eat, all that stuff, like, and all that comes with time. Because don't compound that problem. You have one bad day, fix it the next day. Try to run a streak of good days together, and time will prove to yourself, who you thought you were or who you wanted to be.
Yeah, there was another, it's like kill the quit. There was another saying, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was like, you can never fucking quit. That's it. You can't ever quit. You just got to keep going and keep going and keep going and keep going. And, eventually over time, you'll never think about quitting.
Yeah, and that's jiu-jitsu. I mean, if you think about it, you're out there in the streets with somebody and they have your back. Like, you're not going to just let them kill you.
Yeah, you're going to
die.
Because
there's no quitting. You either kill the quit or you die.
Yeah, for sure.
We're not about to die here.
No, that's definitely not the plan.
So we better get to class so I can learn to be better and I don't die. Josh, plug yourself.
You can find us on all the social medias, although we're not huge on that. We put it out there. 10th Planet Chicago on Instagram, 10th Planet Jiu Jitsu Chicago on Facebook. The website is probably going to go down shortly because we're getting a new domain. So we're switching it from the 10th Planet JJ Chicago to just 10th Planet Chicago. So we're going to build a new site. It's going to be cool. We'll still have like the store and all that stuff on there, but we're going to streamline that so there's less, stuff on, garbage on there. So it'll be easier format for everybody to get the information that they're looking for. And yeah, so that'll be coming out soon. We've got some fun seminars coming up, some that we can talk about, some we can't. So we'll probably bring it back when we get closer to that. And then we'll just come by the gym, come and check us out, have learn some stuff, and come on in. Your first one's always on me, like the best drug dealer in the world. Right?
It is.
Gotta get them hooked on that first. So you're always chasing the dragon. No, yeah, come on in, try it out. We're always open for that, and we've got a interesting thought process on jiu-jitsu, and we dig it. There's 80 of us or something like that seem to all agree. So yeah, it's a fun time.
Awesome. Thank you for joining me again, and I'm excited for how this one's going to turn out. This one's going to sound a lot different to the listeners, and then I want some feedback, and I want to know if you guys like the new format, and let Josh know what's up. I mean, he's a hot commodity on the views and the downloads, and I appreciate you guys. I appreciate everybody that tunes in for him, and hopefully you guys stick around. Leave a comment, subscribe, rate this on iTunes. So that way it can be found by more people. We appreciate you. This is Head Kick Radio. Josh, we out.
We out.
Hey, everybody. You can find me at stevez_D on Twitter and Instagram. Also, look me up on Facebook. I appreciate every single one of you for tuning in. Leave Josh some feedback. Leave myself some feedback. Like I said, let me know what you think about the new format, the new style. Something I'm thinking about switching to, doing a little bit more, getting more people involved. I appreciate you all. Have a great week.
Say hello to the stars above.